Prestige worldwide. Why?
Prestige worldwide.
Prestige Worldwide welcomes you to the following presentation of the League of Extraordinary Dicks.
Everyone, and welcome back to the L.E.D podcast, episode 3, week 1 review. I'm joined by Drew, Grizzly Adam Spears, and Cody Luck, Carolina Rain, and then obviously myself, Pino Cornflakes. So real quick before we get into anything that happened with week 1's results, anything like that, I kind of want to touch on very briefly. Well, actually, not briefly, but this has a lot to do with the league right now, and that's the injuries to Aaron Rodgers and J.K. Dobbins, both going down with season-ending Achilles injuries, and that's very detrimental, especially to Jeff, since he waited on a quarterback, and to Russ. And I may have jinxed him because I was high on Dobbins.
Not going to say I predicted it, but I predicted it.
It's just an absolutely brutal week 1 for big-time players in the league. We already sucked going in to the opening game. We knew Kelsey was out. Cooper Kupp was on the fence if he was going to play or not. He didn't. He's now on IR for the next 4 weeks. Then you got someone like Aaron Rodgers, who maybe not a big-time fantasy player, but with him not being in the lineup, I mean, what's going to happen with folks like Garrett Wilson, who was projected to be a top 5 wide receiver? His production may drop now. Mm-hmm. J.K. Dobbins had an incredible start to the game before he got injured. And then some other ones, there's a couple Steelers. Freiermuth's got a chest injury. He's questionable right now. And Deontay Johnson also tweaked his hamstring. So a lot of big names who can contribute to teams just going out for week 1. I mean, it's terrible. And I'm not even mentioning Mark Andrews didn't play either. I mean, just a ton of big names. We'll cover those as we go through the show.
Yeah. Do you think with the recent Shaq putting Tua on the trade block, is that now all of a sudden interest Jeff? Is Jeff the front runner as the guy for Tua now? Because, I mean, I don't know what Jeff does in this situation, to be honest. And it's so early. It's too soon to even really try to make a move like that, to make it make sense this early, because you don't know. You don't know what's going to happen with Tua. And I'm not saying Tua's going to get hurt. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, Tua had an incredible game this past week, but
Jeff doesn't have a running back to give up.
Yeah. Do you have the assets to give Shaq?
I think he's swinging for. I think Derek Carr's on the block. I think he might be swinging for Derek. And then Brock Purdy didn't play bad.
Brock Purdy played great.
You never know.
Yeah, he did.
I'll be honest with you. I if it's just me, I don't want to influence anyone, but I think Shaq put that offer out to the league very early in the game.
Very, very quickly, yes.
Very quickly in the game. And by the end of that game, I don't think Shaq needs to do anything. Because we just touched on it. If J.K. Dobbins is out, he's got Gus Edwards on his bench now. So the running back he's looking for is now his potentially starting running back. And he didn't have to trade anything. He didn't have to give Tua up. And I know we talked, Tua had a great game. Tua was actually, at the end of week 1, keeping perspective here, he's the co-leader for league MVP at this point in time.
It was an incredible game for Miami. I will say that. We're going to get into that. Obviously, I have to touch on that in my review between y'all two, because there was a specific player in that game that just absolutely went off. So I have to touch on that just a little bit. But so if we're going to get into it, the game of the week, I think we all agreed on, and I think it was the one that Drew is going to end up reviewing first, which was Russ and Brendan, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. That one just decided on Monday night, so.
Yeah, so, and it's not a knock to anybody else's week 1 performances. I mean, there was a lot of separation, I should say, between teams in week one. Now, again, it's week one. Just because you had a bad week one doesn't mean you're going to have a bad week two. It's just there was not a whole lot of, to be honest, there's not a whole lot of competition going into this second week after week one was already played out. But that could change, obviously, that a lot of quarterbacks played terribly. Not terribly. They played consistently, but not good enough to put up fantasy numbers. They did good enough to win, but they didn't put up fantasy numbers.
Let's just say Dallas's D screwed me by playing so damn good.
Dallas's D, that was intense.
Because that just threw every game script off. But I'll go along with the first game of the week. We gave it to game of the week for the first one was Russ and Brendan. All in all, around the board, Aaron Jones lights it up in the second half before hurting the hamstring. So
I think it was hamstring. Yeah, that was another one.
Another injury on there. But Diggs stepped up. Looking at their points projected, everyone either hit it or excelled it. So I think Russ's best player was, again, I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but Aaron Jones, I said was my favorite pick of the draft. So he got 25.7. Brendan's, I think, most shocking player to me was Laporta.
Yes.
Sam Laporta, the tight end.
I think Brendan has found a gem. Brendan's found a gem in the tight end because that was one of his last picks, and he was heavily targeted on Thursday. Jared Goff looked his way a lot, so he may have found a gem late in the draft.
All in all, there's not much to complain about Brendan's team. They all put up a decent stat line. There's just not a lot of touchdowns on his side compared to where Russ had, 2 touchdowns from Jones, a touchdown from Dobbins, Diggs. Both quarterbacks played equal. So, all in all, well-played game there. Russ got to pull it out with the Diggs. Again, Allen always stares at Diggs anyway, so we kind of figured he was going to get the 3 points he needed to win that game. So Russ pulls that one off. Yeah. Any comments about you guys from that game?
Back over to Russ's team now and looking over. Honestly, it's expected from Russ to just have the kind of draft he had. I mean, it's just kind of there. Jones, huge pickup for him then. And honestly, you can't go wrong. There really wasn't anything to complain back on either end. Both teams played phenomenally. It just one had to win. That's kind of what it came down to. I think Deshaun was a good pick for him. It's just quarterback play was kind of iffy and shoddy. I mean, look at Josh Allen, 3 picks last night. Lamar Jackson didn't do anything of note. So he got, both of them got good plays out of good quarterbacks. It was a hit or miss type situation this week. And both of these teams hit, and it's not a knock against Brendan's team. Brendan's team it was good. It was good enough to beat probably more than half of the teams in the league this week. Just not Russ. So I think, hell, if you look at Russ's bench, even Russ's bench has outperformed most teams in the league this week, including myself. So kudos. I mean, both teams played phenomenally. I really don't have a complaint about either one of these teams. I think they did really well.
I fully agree. One of the things for Deshaun, it was a blowout from the beginning. He didn't really have to pass the ball a whole lot. So Brendan probably benefited from that because they went to Chubb pretty steady throughout the game. So Russ actually did end up taking the lead on Monday night, and Diggs really picked up most of his points in that fourth quarter when they were trying to drive down the field and tie it. A lot of big chunk plays, so that was good. Yeah, I think Aaron Jones is, like Drew's credit for calling it, probably his best player. This is his best player this week, but you got to be concerned. I mean, pulled up with his hamstring, and with this whole list that I read at the beginning, I mean, hamstrings could end up pulling players out for weeks at a time. So there is a serviceable running back behind him in A.J. Dillon. And it was very clear that Aaron Jones was better than A.J. Dillon. But with it being week one, they may decide to rest Aaron Jones, get him back to 100% because, I mean, they dominated Chicago. The game was not as close as the score indicates. So, and then my final note on Russ is, I mean, J.K. Dobbins looked great. They went to him early and often, and as you mentioned, Lamar didn't have to do anything because the rushing attack for Baltimore was so good. It's just unfortunate. J.K. Dobbins was going to shut us up, or at least shut me up, because I said last week that I was not a huge J.K. Dobbins believer, and this is why. Is because the injury history.
bug. Yeah.
So for Brendan, he really quarterback. That's why he went and got a quarterback right there. Is he's wanting to put up 20, 21 points every week. And then you stack it with Keenan Allen. That's super smart. And then, like I said, I really think Sam Laporta could be a gem for Brendan. Jared Goff went to him, even with a healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery all performed very well. He went to Sam Laporta early and often. So I think that could be a very, very good player for him going forward. So, and then finally, we touched on Rachaad White last week, and I still stand by what me and Drew believe, that he's the workhorse running back down in Tampa. He had several attempts. I forget what his stat line is, but he ran the ball a ton of times. Only got 39 yards rushing and 10 yards receiving. So the volume is there for him going forward. And he'll break out eventually. Chances are he'll probably be against Carolina, but he'll break out eventually. And as long as they keep feeding him the ball and he stays healthy, there is no one in that backfield who's going to compete with him.
Well, I hope it's not that long. We don't play out till like week 11, week 12. Well, my next game I'm doing is Kellen reigning champion, Kellen versus Jeff. It's not much to say here. Rodgers went down. And, I mean, there's a lot to say here, actually. Kellen won this game because of Dallas' defense, I think. Well, and if Rodgers stays healthy, and I mean, it was just a stupid.
I can pull it up for you right now. I got it right here.
I got it.
7 sacks, 0 points, and 2 touchdowns.
7 sacks, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble, 2 touchdowns, and a block kick.
A block.
You just don't see that.
Yeah, you don't see that. That's unheard of.
Over almost, actually, more than a third of Kellen's points was from Dallas' defense. Justin Jefferson, as you expect. Justin Jefferson's going to do what Justin Jefferson does. But other than that, Kellen doesn't have a bright spot right now other than Dallas' D and Justin Jefferson.
Now, Breece Hall looked pretty good.
Oh, I didn't
but
even see him. He's
limited.
on the bench. Yeah, but even
he's on the bench.
Even on a limited basis, you put up 10 rushes, 127 yards, 1 catch, 1 for 20. Mm-hmm. You saw, especially with Zach Wilson being the QB now, it's going to be a run-heavy offense. So that pick right there, which I said might be his worst pick, might turn out to be his best pick now because Zach Wilson. He didn't show anything to me yesterday.
Was it? Four plays? Was it 4 plays and then Aaron went down?
Yeah,
4
plays.
That's what it was. It was 4.
He has actually never completed a pass as a New York Jet officially.
That's insane. That it happened that quickly. I don't know if you guys have seen it. This is off topic, but that TikTok that's going around that says Aaron Rodgers Jets highlights, and it's just him carrying a flag out.
Yep. No,
anyway, off basis.
There's one of him flying a jet, like a little. What is it? A little RC airplane just dips down.
But to touch on what you said, if Kellen didn't have that big game from their defense, and Jeff had a quarterback that actually played the full game, could have been completely different. Because everybody's numbers pretty much match up. Tony Pollard kind of washes out Justin Jefferson, and if he had a quarterback that played, and then the defense is played to defensive standards, it's probably a different game.
Well, I guess I'm a bright spot for Kellen. Again, I am totally okay, and since we're doing this for the first time, with being absolutely wrong. Just be like, I'm gonna end up on freezing cold takes for the LED. Like, it's just because last week I said Ramondre Stevenson, not really sold on him, and it's hard to depend on a New England running back or New England player at that. That still may end up being the case, but Ramondre shut me up week 1, almost a 12-point performance. He did underperform a little bit, but I mean, he's one of Kellen's highest-scoring players. Justin Jefferson doing what Justin Jefferson was drafted number 1 overall to do. So that's good that one of his picks, he has solid expectations for going forward. But I agree, you're not going to get a 37-point from your defense every single week. That's only happened one time a couple years ago when I had New England, and they were putting up, it was almost like having a second quarterback. They were putting up like average of 20 points a game. So
that was against me. In case you're wondering.
Again, he's got some good players. Week 1, you're still figuring out your lineup. We didn't know going in that Brees Hall was going to be that healthy because he looked very, very good last night. So I'm sure he'll end up starting Brees Hall. I even look at a player like Samaje Perine, pretty solid production with 77 yards and 4 receptions. So I mean that's solid production with Javonte Williams still coming back from his injury. So he's got some pieces that he can work with, put his more optimal lineup together. And then swinging over to Jeff here, it's just the poor guy can't catch a break. I mean, as I said last week, the waiting on a quarterback strategy is a tried and true fantasy method. You cannot predict something like that. Fortunately, you can replace the quarterback pretty easily in fantasy. Where it's really going to hurt Jeff is the Garrett Wilson pick because he took Garrett Wilson pretty high with the intent to pair him with Rodgers. So I'm just concerned about Garrett Wilson's production going forward. I'm sure Zach Wilson will try to look to him early and often, but what made Rodgers so dangerous is that he had the ability to spread the ball around. He didn't stare down a receiver, and he's just, I guess what he had between the ears was enough to scare defenses. So I worry about Garrett Wilson's production. Tyler Lockett also injured. He was evaluated for a concussion yesterday.
It was him and Jacoby Myers, right? In concussion protocols, both of them.
Yep, that's right. So Tyler Lockett and Jacoby Myers. And Jacoby's came late in the game, and he had a huge day. Just to wrap this up, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is going to win that backfield by the end of the season. For his first game, he looked very, very sharp. David Montgomery owned the night, but I think Jahmyr Gibbs, the potential for him is clearly evident, and he's going to win that backfield. Mm-hmm. And then Tony Pollard, absolutely dominating performance. 2 rushing touchdowns, 70 yards rushing and 12 receiving yards. Absolutely dominant. To me, he's been the best running back in Dallas for years now, but now he's showing that Dallas was right to believe in him and let Zeke go with his first game performance. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think, again, it's going to be a long uphill battle for Jeff to solidify himself a quarterback. And then after that, Kellen it's not going to happen every week with defense. There's just no way.
But having said that, I mean, Jeff should have won this game. Jeff should have easily won this game. If he had a quarterback in the starting spot, he would have won this game easily.
Mm-hmm.
Under normal circumstances, sir.
Princess this year.
Yep.
And he could have beat potentially the champion of this year or this past year. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. I'm going to go ahead and take the next matchup, which is between you two. I'm going to go ahead and review this one.
You guys crushed my review.
Obviously,
I appreciate
it. Carolina Rain.
I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the show, boys.
You gotta fill in on this one, man. I'm gonna go over. You know what? I'm gonna go over your top performers that I have on your team right now. So I only took the top 2. So Calvin Ridley had 8 receptions, 101 yards, and a score for 20.1 points. Your defense, New York Jets defense, had 5 sacks, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble recovery, and a punt return touchdown for 20 points. That, honestly, if he didn't have Cheetah, which I'm going to go over here in a second now, if he didn't have Tyreek Hill, could have put you in a better position to potentially take over this game. But it just Tyreek had 11 receptions, 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, 39 points in week 1, which is insane. And you know what the crazy thing is Cody's next best player is a kicker. Jake Elliott, he had 4 for 4 field goal attempts, and he was 18.7 points. Honestly, both of your teams, even though Drew's yours slightly went underneath your projections, you guys played great. Both teams played phenomenally. The only difference is the quarterback play. Kind of hurt you a little bit more than it hurt Cody. Cody had 14.54, and you had 6.32. Now, again, Dak Prescott didn't have to do anything towards the end of that game. He just had to just sit back and hand the ball off. Basically, the game was over in the first quarter. So you couldn't really get much out of your quarterback, which kind of screwed you at the end. But all in all, both of your teams played really well. The only one that I'm still a little iffy on is Cody starting Jackson, which I'm not sure if that's going to be the case this week. But honestly, I mean, hell, you got another quarterback option on your bench, Drew, that you could probably throw in there. Jordan Love played out of his mind week 1. So, you have a lot of options, and it's week 1. Everybody's trying to feel out their roster and see what's going on. But you guys killed it, honestly. I don't really see a team had to win. That's what it came down to, and it just happened to be the team that had the 215-yard performance from a wide receiver. So
I'm ready to sell the farm.
I'm not to stroke Drew's ego a little bit, but Zane is absolutely right. I mean, the fact that Dallas jumped up just so quickly in the beginning of the game, I mean, that takes away both Dak and CeeDee Lamb for you. CeeDee still put up 77 yards, 4 catches. I mean, but Dak has no reason to pass the ball. It's literally turn around, hand the ball to Tony Pollard. On the opposite hand of that, Saquon completely take Saquon out of the game because they are down so much that Daniel Jones, they have to go deep. So that one game in particular was just absolutely brutal for your team. Another gem, I was a fan because with me being a Panther fan, but Hayden Hurst, that was a huge game for Hayden Hurst as far as fantasy points go. That's putting up 12.6. I know Hurts is on your bench, but with tight end points being so hard to come by in this league, it looks like Bryce is not really staring, but he's looking to Hayden Hurst pretty often. And then, Drew, I think you might already have a leg up on week 2. Kyron Williams is going to be, if not the next best waiver wire ad in all of fantasy, and you already got him. If I remember correctly, didn't you pick him up just before the game started?
I picked up Hayden Hurst, I picked up Love, and I picked up Kyron Williams.
all 3 players that went and did something special, he's already picked up before the game started. That's good for you. Kudos to you for doing that and having the wherewithal to do that.
I mean, and I'll touch on it in my game, but Kyron absolutely dominated the touches. So can we expect that going forward? Is up in the air, but
Cam Akers even out-touched him because Kyron only touched it 15 times for 52 yards. Cam Akers was 22 carries for 23 yards. So,
jeez.
But Cody's team, I think if I was in Cody's spot at 3, I told Cody when we were hanging out one day that I didn't like Chase. I'd rather have Hill. Cody made probably the smartest decision by going to Tyreek Hill.
Smart. That is such a. When he said that he was taking Tyreek at the draft, I was like, "What?" He preached Chase, but now it's like, "Hey, you look like a damn genius for doing that."
It paid off. We're on weekend.
Yeah. Well, it's week 1 too. So
I was just gonna say I think Cody can ride the Dolphins train because there's gonna be a lot of points scored. Mostert did well for him. Even when Jeff Wilson comes back, Mostert's the goal line back, so he's gonna get his touches. It's the only thing that scares me about Cody's team is, I guess, it's not even really scares. He's just the number 3 running back for his team when bye weeks come. I don't see a number 3 running back for his team right now with Gibson and Dion, and that's about the only thing that really worries me about Cody's team is his backup. Other than that, Justin Fields is I think the first game was kind of a let's just see how the punches roll. Let's see how the passing game goes before we unleash the legs of Justin Fields.
I think you can say that about most offenses in week 1. It's let's just see what we got. Let's all gel together. So what Zano said is Deion Jackson. Yeah, I took him strictly because I knew Jonathan Taylor wasn't going to be there. I figured with a rookie quarterback, they would need a run game to kind of help ease him in. So he carried it for 13 times, but he just didn't do anything, and then he fumbled twice. It was absolutely terrible. So I fully expect him to get benched next week.
I think Zach Moss is supposed to come back too.
And not only Zach Moss is coming back, Evan Hull, which is who I remember Sarah took him late. He's on injured reserve for the next 4 weeks. So they're thinning running back, and Zach Moss is already hurt, but he'll probably start next week.
What was the Anthony Richardson injury? Was that lower body?
He is fine. The Colts said he's fine, but yes, it was like a foot or something.
Okay. I didn't know what happened there. I just know he got hurt towards the end of that game. Okay. Moving on to Chicken Little Flea Flicker and Dirty Skivvies. This wasn't really a game because Sarah had a problem literally before the first game of the year. She lost her number 1 overall pick in Travis Kelce to injury, which fortunately for this week, he is questionable, and it's not looking like it's going to be something major or serious for him. So he's probably going to come back from that. But her top performers, I got it out, was Michael Pittman Jr., 8 receptions, 97 yards, and a score for 19.7. And then Devontae Smith was 7 receptions, 47 yards, and a score for 14.2. Dirty Skivvies, Joe, his best performers was CMC. 22 rushes, 152 and a rushing touchdown, 3 receptions, 17 yards, 169 total yards, and 24.4 points. And then his kicker was Tyler Bass, 3 made field goals, 13.4 points. Again, I have it written in here that it's not all teams performed the way that I guess everybody thought they were going to. It's week 1. Joe Burrow looked like he just looked bad. And T. Higgins didn't score anything. Didn't even get he got the ball thrown to him how many times here? 8 targets, no receptions. That's wild to me. But then again, weather conditions and Joe Burrow didn't look the greatest. Outside of that, Dallas Goedert, let's see. He didn't even have a reception in this game. So it was kind of a weird game between the two of them. Sarah's team's not going to perform like this every week. I will say that. With Kelce coming back, she'll be in pretty decent shape. And Joe's team is just, whenever Josh Allen calms down and stops trying to be the gunslinger that we all know that he is and actually tries to play the game methodically, he's going to be dangerous. But right now, he's just trying to throw that thing every which way he could possibly go. Did it get Joe the win? Yeah, but Joe honestly had this one in the bag. But if he doesn't get better quarterback play out of a high pick in Josh Allen, it could be pretty damning to him down the road. But right now, it looked pretty good. Cortland Sutton was a nice surprise on Joe's bench. Nico Collins was a nice surprise on Sarah's bench. It's just, again, it's week 1. We're all trying to figure this stuff out. But, again, with her not having – Cole Kmet played pretty good.
Yeah.
But not knowing what's going to happen week 1, it's kind of hard to tell. But, Joe Burrow playing and only getting 3.18 points is not going to help you win a game. So
no, Sarah's team is way more talented than this, and they actually performed. Joe Burrow's been out for weeks with his calf injury. He feels that's what led to a little bit of his play yesterday. But honestly, I think Cleveland was just that suffocating. They dominated from the first whistle. They just couldn't really get going. And with Burrows playing poorly, that leads to T. Higgins playing poorly. He put up a goose egg, that was a high pick too. And you're not going to get that typically from T. Higgins. We already touched the Kelsey's out as well. So she was down from the get-go. And when she's got a full healthy lineup, her team is much more talented than what they perform to. I am going to toot my own horn. I called Michael Pittman Jr. was going to be a great pick for her, and she got him really late as a value pick. I feel like that's going to be the case going forward with Anthony Richardson, looking at him as his number 1.
I was going to go ahead and just say I think the sleeper pick for her is going to be James Cook. He kind of, from what he did last night against the Jets D, I think it's only going to go up for him.
Yep. So, and then we touched with Russ and Brendan's game, and she's got A.J. Dillon on the bench. So that could end up being a play for her next week, depending on how that goes. But her team's just way more talented than they put out, and this is not the kind of performance she's going to put out every week. And even though Joe won by 30, he probably should have won by more.
Yeah. I could see that, but I also see it could be the other way too. If Burrow ends up performing, T. Higgins ends up performing, it could have been completely different either way. Joe could have won by a hell of a lot more, but he could also, either squeaked one out against Sarah or lost to Sarah. It's just really quarterback play and T. Higgins not doing anything kind of hurt.
Yeah, Josh Allen. It's week 1. Josh Allen's upset with himself basically because he said in his press conference, he said same shit, different year. That's what he said. So he's clearly frustrated. Look, it's week 1. There's 17 more to go. And the expectations for the Bills are still sky high. So it's not. I'm not worried about Josh Allen. Debo got in with the action with CMC. Kudos to Brock Purdy for spreading it out. The star of the show of the day really was Brandon Ayuk, but we'll touch on him in just a moment. Goose egg from Dallas Goedert. And then, finally just Tyler Bass in San Francisco. Good special teams, top defense, top kicker. So you make up some easy points there. So Joe probably should have won a little bit by a wider margin, but Sarah's team is not going to be this bad all year. So the first game I'm going to talk about is the player haters versus Steel City. Matt takes
I'll
the
take
dub.
this over, Cody. You stole my thunder. I'll take yours.
Sure.
All right, here we go. No, I'm joking. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that, buddy. So Matt takes the W 90.24 to 76.64. Chris Olave for Matt's team is clearly the number 1 wide receiver in New Orleans, and it looks like he's Derek Carr's favorite target. He was targeted 10 times with 8 catches, 112 yards. No touchdowns, but again, with the high volume, they'll come. I'm not worried about that. Bijan shut me up as a Panther fan, and he shut me up as a contributor to this podcast. I was not a believer, and I was very adamant I was not a believer in Bijan, and again, I could not have been more wrong. 56 yards rushing on 10 rushes. Caught all 6 of his passes for 27 yards and a touchdown. Just absolutely great performance by the rookie. And they are clearly a run heavy offense. I don't know if you saw, but they had double-digit passing attempts, and it was only like 3 yards passing. It was
I watched most of that game, and that cut that Bijan made out of the backfield on, I don't know who that was, that Panther player that he ended up scoring a touchdown on, was absolutely insane. And I don't think they had more than double-digit passing yards until second quarter.
Oh, it was the fourth quarter.
Something like that. Was it the fourth? It was late. It wasn't early at all. But it was.
He had
insane.
like negative 3.
I'm sorry.
Desmond Ridder had like negative 3 passing yards at one point. So.
You never be able to say this in your life until this year. You might be able to start both Atlanta running backs.
Dude, that's a great point. I mean,
Algier looked great. He really did.
I think it's a really good point, Drew. And you might be right because I remember I did that with Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara back in the day, and it worked out good. But I think you might be onto something there, Drew. Cam Akers, what's going on with Cam Akers? As Drew said earlier, 22 rushes for 29 yards. He was able to salvage the day a little bit with that late touchdown. But, I mean, Kyron is clearly the better running back from what we've seen just off of week 1. So that backfield looks to be a little unsettled at this point, I should say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good production from Evan Ingram. Caught all 5 of his passes for 49 yards. That's, again, for the LED, that's solid production. And if you can get 9 points from him every week, 7 points from him every week, I'll take that all day. Drew, what happened to Drake London?
I don't know. I was never a big firm believer in Drake London anyway, but especially when you have such a run heavy offense, and that's where Desmond Ridder came from in Cincinnati was the run heavy offense. Drake London's gonna be one of those sit on the bench, let them ride until they want to put Heineke in, because I don't see. It might hurt your feelings, but Panthers aren't that gonna be good of a team this year. They're not.
I'm all right with that.
And so to get 0 points against Carolina Panthers secondary, it just shows what Desmond Ridder's capable of, and it's not a lot.
Yeah, and it baffles me that he's basically your number 1 receiver, and he only had 1 target. So that's just, it says a lot about who your quarterback is, and he's not really finding the guys that are open. And a lot of I know Cody probably watched the game, but he acted like Captain Checkdown half the game. And most of that game, he didn't really actually do much with the ball whenever he did pass it out. Bijan Robinson took the only, like, he made it positive with that. I'm telling you, that cut, if you have not seen that, look at it. It is disgusting what he did. But outside of that, he was just short. And he had that one pass to Kyle Pitts down late. I think it was the third or fourth quarter that he hit Kyle Pitts. But that was really about all of that I saw out of Ritter. And if he can't get to his number one receiver, London's going to be, if he was on my team, he'd be on the bench right now until they bring in, like Drew said, another quarterback to actually throw it down.
I didn't know Heineke was there, and to me, it's a no-brainer. Why would you not start Heineke over Ritter? Is it just because you drafted Ritter? Is that why?
Yeah. Probably so. Yeah.
Well, they pay. I'm pretty sure they paid a top dollar for a backup QB. I think he like 2 years, 16, 18 mil.
I mean, we saw Heineke start in Carolina, but I mean, he was so good in Washington. I mean, they wanted to keep him. Yeah, I think I'm with you, Drew. I think I'd start Heineke over him. He probably get a little bit better pass distribution. So we'll go ahead and move on to Shaq. I'm just really impressed by Patrick Mahomes doing Patrick Mahomes thing, even without Kelsey. I mean, he came in a little below the projection, but I mean, still 2 passing touchdowns, 225 yards, and his receivers were terrible. Could not. I mean, they couldn't catch a cold.
I was going to say, it's all right. Bowen still beat me, so it doesn't really matter what Kadarius did.
Kudos to Shaq for taking that chance on DeAndre Hopkins. He's a big name. I don't know if he was going to be super established in Tennessee, but he's very clearly the number one wide receiver. He had 13 targets yesterday, which is incredibly good. ETN balled out, his best player on his team.
I love ETN.
He's going to do good in this PPR format. I mean, I know we're just moving into this, but he's going to be very, very good. Him and McCaffrey both with the high target volume. The one thing about ETN, though, to be concerned about, Tank Bigsby got a goal line touchdown, took one away from him. So that might be his situation to monitor going forward. And then finally, DeAndre Swift is not who we thought he was. That is Kenneth Gainwell's backfield. And even next, Gainwell is or Swift is?
Gainwell.
No, he said yes.
No. Gainwell is hurt.
Okay.
Oh, he's hurt. He's
Well,
hurt.
that might be a chance for him because Rashad Penny was a healthy scratch. That might pay off for him going forward. That's all that I had on this particular game. If Jamar Chase got some production from Chase, I think it could be a different story. Drew, what do you think?
Shaq's got 2 studs at quarterback.
And I think he just kind of fell into another running back like Cody had said earlier, and Gus Edwards sitting there. But we'll have to see what they do week 2. I don't know if they're going to do a running back by committee or what their plan is.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, they brought up Melvin Gordon too, so who knows what that backfield is going to be like.
I would think they would stick with their own guys, don't you? I mean, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill were there.
You would think they both got 8 touches after Dobbins got put on the season ending.
Zeno, any other thing to add?
No, I'm just looking at my dismal team. So go ahead and review.
Let's just move on to our final game of the week. It's going to be Happy Little TDs taking on Pino Cornflakes.
Week 1. That's what I'm going with. It was week 1.
Well, Devontae Adams had Surtain on him, so nothing to worry about there. Juju, I don't like Mac Jones, so hopefully he's there.
He played good though, man.
Yeah, but
I don't know. It's week 1. My team's boom or bust. But go ahead, Cody. I'll let you.
No, what were we gonna say about Mac Jones, Drew?
It's just not my favorite. He very tight end. Even though they don't get a lot of production, he loves to look at the tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
yeah, Hunter Henry had a good game,
and then Gesicki was still there. So, but that's just, I don't know. He's a captain check down to me. He's not like how he was when his national championship year at Alabama.
All right. Well, so we'll start with Bowen's team. He got good production out of AJ. He just didn't get equally as good production out of Jalen Hurts. This was Kenneth Gainwell did run the ball quite a lot in this game, so that's something to consider. I think Jalen Hurts will pick up some more rushing yards throughout the year. He
I think it was a rain game, wasn't it?
It was. It was raining
Yeah,
very
so
heavily.
I had that
That
duo
does
last
limit
year.
it.
Magical.
Probably should have been a little bit more lopsided. Jay, I think he probably should have lost by a little more. But
Oh, I would not doubt.
he did have when he did throw to Devontae and he did throw to AJ Brown, it was a lot of short passes, and AJ and Devontae just turned it into yards after carry or yards after catch. So not a lot of deep balls. LOL at Kadarius Toney. He's. I would say if Rodgers doesn't get hurt last night, he's still the main takeaway from Week 1 about how bad his performance was.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many times Mahomes can hit you in the hands. So, so I think Bowen's finally got him a player in Austin Eckler. And now he's hurt a little. He's hurt, but I think he's finally got him a player.
He
sure
got
does.
somebody, yes.
Dominating performance by Eckler and Joshua Kelly. They were just absolutely carved up Miami's defense. But his performances like that is why Eckler finished as the number 1 running back last year. So if he can stay healthy or he can manage an injury, you should still have – that seems a little high, but if you can get like 16, 17 each week, I mean, that's great from a number 1 running back.
Better than 7.
Madison – yeah, exactly. Madison's performance is not as good as the points that he put up.
No.
He had a receiving touchdown late in the game. He only had 34 yards and 34 yards rushing. And listen, Tom Brady's not in Tampa anymore, but there's still a lot of pieces left over from that Super Bowl team in place, including that Tampa defense. And they are not an easy defense. They're not an easy defense to run the ball on. So that probably contributes. I think Tampa is not getting the respect that they deserve. Kyle Pitts, still an enigma 3 years in. Don't know if he's good or not. And then finally, Jamal Williams is clearly he's the number 1 back while Kamara's out. But I'm gonna tell you right now, as soon as Kamara's back, that's his backfield again. I mean, he only had 18 rushes for 45 yards, but I mean that's a lot of volume for not a lot of yards.
But Tennessee's got a solid front 4 too, so we'll see how it goes from there.
What you got, Zano? What you got on Bowen before I move on to your side?
Ayuk, what a terrible bench.
I don't really know if you need to review my side. I think my side's pretty much just it is what it is. But I do think Bowen made a mistake starting Tony over Ayuk for sure because it didn't matter. Let's just be real. In this game, it did not matter, but he could have won by a hell of a lot more if he would have just put in Ayuk. Ayuk is clearly going to be one of Purdy's best receivers going forward. It's just going to be that way. I think Debo is just kind of like he's there. He's more of a distraction at this point, and Ayuk's going to just reap the benefits of that. And obviously that's exactly what happened against Pittsburgh this past weekend. His Bowen's team is not princess worthy. Now, if something were to happen detrimental to this team, I don't see him being. I see Bowen probably playing for playoffs at some point this year. But he just needs to make the right call and start who he needs to start at the right times. I full-heartedly believe that he took Drew's tactics from last year and fly Eagles fly with Hurts and Brown, and it's gonna work. It's going to work. It's gonna be scary too. Because he's got Eckler sitting there in the backfield, and if Madison gets going for Minnesota, it's just going to be – it could be very disgusting. Now, the whole Jamal Williams thing, I don't know how it's going to pan out when Week 4 comes around and Kamara's back. I do see Williams getting a lot of the goal line touches and Kamara just sitting on the bench. But I don't know exactly how that's going to work out for him. But outside of that, Bowen's team is scary. And if you're downplaying Bowen's team, you're probably going to get burned by him, to be honest with you, because he's got some weapons that can hurt you at any moment. So I don't know. I do think that our division is tough between the three of you. I'm just kind of sitting and waiting and seeing if my team actually wants to show up in like week 5 or 6 and make it interesting. But outside of that, yeah, no, Bones' team is scary, and I wouldn't take his team for
The only thing
granted.
standing in Bowen's way is Bowen.
100%. Yeah, it's not his team; it's him. It's whether or not he wants to make the plays that he needs to make.
I got a steal
I agree
trade
with that.
from last year by trading Goddard for James Conner, and so he's got to stay out of his own way and don't make stupid trades.
I think he'll tell you that himself. With having worked with him last year, he talked about his first year in the league. He talked about last year. He's like, I'm just not gonna make any trades, or so he will probably limit his trades.
He'd be smart.
He's got a good team. He's got a lot of good depth. And I'm gonna count Ayuk as a week one. No one could have predicted he would have got that kind of target volume. So he'll get it straightened out.
I wouldn't have predicted 28 points, but I think Ayuk is Brock Purdy's number one.
No, I think you could be right.
Mm-hmm.
Zeno, you picked a bad week to have a bad week, my man. That's really all it comes down to.
Week one, brother.
It is that.
It's week one.
Lamar did not help you at all. He didn't have that rushing attack was so good throughout the day, as we previously talked about. The only thing I can say about Lamar going forward is we know Lamar can run the ball, and I think if they design a couple runs for him safely, because we know Lamar is pretty much glass if he gets hit too hard. So if they have a couple design runs for him where he can just get the sideline, get out, I think you'll see some increase in rushing numbers. But he loves Zay Flowers. I think that's when Mark Andrews gets back, Andrews maybe is number one, but Zay Flowers is already the best wide receiver as far as Lamar goes. Rashad Bateman, Odell did not see the target volume that Zay Flowers did. So he'll get his numbers back up. Just you couldn't have that kind of performance with you being banged up. Cooper Kupp out, number one pick out for 4 weeks, and then you also took the chance on Jonathan Taylor with him being out. Kamara suspended. You just couldn't afford that poor performance this week.
My whole thing is if I escape this division with one win over somebody, I'll take it. That's my forte. That's kind of where I'm leaning towards. If I can escape with one victory somewhere and it be a cheap win, honestly, because if you lose to me at this point, it's going to be a cheap one because something happened. If I can show up in week 6 at 2-3, I'd be okay with that. Do you get what I'm saying? It's as weird as that's going to sound. I'd be okay with 2-3. Hell, I'd be.
You got to steal some division wins.
I just need to. I have to steal something along the line in the next couple of weeks. That's the way I'm looking at my roster right now.
I do think you'll see more production from Devontae Adams next week, even though Jacoby Myers was a starter this week. I mean, he's out with a concussion, and I think maybe I guess the question can be asked: does Devontae still have some lingering issues with that leg? Because he very late in the training camp or the preseason, he had a leg injury, so that could be lingering a little bit. And then finally, your last bright spot. Again, as we touched on, David Montgomery looked very good. They went to him pretty frequently. They got the goal line touch, 74 yards and a touchdown, a pretty solid performance. You're going to need more production from Dameon Pierce. The problem is Houston's a bad team. He's a good player on a bad team. I've heard that Juju might be in the doghouse already with Belichick.
I could.
You got some work to do. Maybe keep an eye on what Tutu Atwell's going to do with Cooper Kupp being out. But you got some work to do, and you should. I think you're like in the middle or to the top of the waiver wire this week. So that's all I got for you.
All right. So with that being said, if you guys don't mind, really quickly before we get out of here, you want to look at week 2 and give me your game of the week predictions for week 2. If you guys have a prediction of what is kind of popping out to you, what could be possibly the game of the week. I have one in mind, and that's going to be Kellen and Brendan. I think that game could be down to the wire.
I was going to say,
yeah. What's your pick there,
and Brendan? I was also going to throw out me and old Bowen. It's going to be an enticing game.
That was my next pick. Was you and Bowen?
A little bit of work to do on both sides, but I'm looking at Matt versus Joe. That's an intriguing matchup. Interesting. Again, Zay Flowers in the lineup. Tyler Algier, he's put Drew, I'm looking at his lineup now. He did exactly what you said he was going to do. He's got Bijan and Tyler Algier in his starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
It's probably smart.
So-
See where that takes you.
I'm excited.
But if that's all that we got for this week, then boys, it's a wrap. But yeah, no, this has been a good little week one review for us. We're going to be doing it again, probably same formula. We'll have a game of the week every week, and then we'll go from there. But yeah, if nobody else has anything else, that's.
I just want to
all I
say thank you both for coming on again. This is fun, but especially to the folks who did listen. Last week was a long episode, and we had a lot of people who actually did listen to the whole thing. I
We had
did.
20 views. Did you see that? It's like 20
I know
something
Jeff
views.
listened. We got Jeff fired up. I know Douthat's fired up, and I know Russ listened. Russ dropped a couple references to us about it. So
I didn't hear. I didn't hear.
just thanks to
Jeff
everybody
or,
who listened.
Matt,
It was kind of a bitch to get up, but this one will be much easier. So thank you to everybody who listened.
Yeah, I did talk to Russ earlier today, and Russ said, "Oh, good. When does the podcast go up?" I said, "It's sometime Wednesday." He's like, "Oh, good. I'll be able to listen to it on the way home." So that kind of is it's pretty freaking cool. Like that people actually want to listen to us bullshit about fantasy football, at least within the confines of our league. So, but yeah. All right. So we'll do same time next week. We're gonna do another review, week 2. We'll have game of the week. We'll have all the points and all the good breakdowns that you guys have gotten from us so far. Outside of that, if there's any trade information or anything like that happens during the weeks, if anybody were to trade, and I don't see that happening until probably week 4 or 5, but if that does end up happening, we won't review it until after the trade has been completed, because we do not want to sway your decision. That's going to be another thing that we're going to keep reiterating as we go through this. We're not going to sway your decision any way, shape, or form. If you do make a trade, we do not want you to go and say, I don't want to do it because you listen to us 3 idiots babble on about how it's bad or good. So that's all I got. So I thank you again for listening to the LED podcast, episode 3 at this point, right? It's incredible. Three in already. So
Yeah.
but thanks y'all
Yeah.
for listening, and peace out. Yeah.